How's everyone doing? I wanted to go into the talks right now on the radios are exploding. There's rumors, players to be traded, and an even bigger rumor. Once again, we're back to this story again. Bill Belichick, it's seeming like it's going to be his last year in New England. It's time for him to walk away. He's not ready to be done with football, they say. Wants to come back to the New York Giants. Are the New York Giants going to have such a bad year that the organization is going to make yet another change? How many coach changes can you make in a couple years before you're actually called a circus? It's not like the Giants franchise, but things have been historically bad here now for the last at least 8 out of 9 years. Bill Belichick is maybe arguably the greatest head coach in NFL history. He's got the rings to prove it, not just with the Patriots, but his defenses led the Giants to 2 Super Bowls in 86 and 90 under him. You can't discount that. There are a lot of people that want to give Brady the credit for all the rings in New England. I don't think he could do that either. It was both of them. He's not on the field. He's a head coach. So he gets the credit that head coaches get for winning 6 rings for New England. Three years ago, I wanted Belichick to come back home to the Giants. Instead, he pushed Judge. He referred Judge to the Giants. The guy was a disaster. That was the right time for Belichick to come to the Giants and build a young team around Daniel Jones. A quarterback Belichick was extremely interested in his draft. Really liked the guy. Several teams liked the guy. Look, I'm going to be real with you. Dable and Shane are a young regime. I like them a lot. They're the right guys for the Giants. They're having a bad year. Probably the year the Giants should have had last year. But because they won a playoff game and had a really good year, a lot of the fans falsely believed that this year was the year the Giants were going the extra step or two. No. And I knew that. I said that in the summer, but I tried not to go crazy about it. I kept it really low. So did other people. I got to give Adam some credit out there because Adam was all over it last year. He never bought into the Giants last year during their run, in the middle of the run. He tried telling people, he got a lot of hate. The Giants were a product of an easy schedule, a healthy team, and a very well-coached, disciplined team last year in a very extremely weak NFC conference after the Eagles and the Niners. It was a very weak conference, and the Giants enjoyed the benefits of it. Not putting it down, it was greatly coached by Dable, and rightfully so. He was head coach of the year. There's young talent on this team, but it's young. The Giants have come back to reality this year, and the injuries have bit them in the ass. 9 of 11 offensive linemen that started the season with the Giants are out. And you don't need to go any further than right there. And you got young talented kids like Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibbs. And guess what? Newsflash to people. Just because it's 2023 doesn't mean it doesn't take 2, 3, 4 years to build a player up. It's called development, growth. People expect these guys to be superstars right after year 1. You got to give time. And they got to have other players around them in order to play better on their own. Players raise other players' level of play. The fact that the Giants won a playoff game last year and gave us a fun, exciting season bought Dable time and Joe Shane. And you got to give them 4 to 5 years to build a team. And let's be honest, they took over garbage. They took over a garbage organization, a garbage team, and it's been garbage for 7 or 8 years. And had no money to go shopping for their own players. Daniel Jones, a good, educated quarterback who works his ass off, was not their guy. They never drafted him. And you know so by the 2-year contract they gave him guaranteed because they had to off of a playoff season. rather than a guaranteed 4 years. That tells you that they didn't completely believe in the kid themselves. And again, it wasn't their guy. Joe Shane and Dabble did not draft Daniel Jones. They inherited him. And Mara wanted to give him the chance he deserves. Well, I think he's gotten his chance. And I don't blame Daniel Jones for this horrible season. I blame the O-line being crippled and terrible. But you're going into the 6th year with Daniel Jones. How many more years do you guys want to sit around, including myself, because I'm a Daniel Jones supporter? How long are we going to sit around and keep saying, give him another year, get him another O-lineman, give him another year, get him another receiver? Although the talent lacks on this team, the real good quarterbacks, the great quarterbacks raise the level of play around them. They make average players good, and they make good players play great. And Daniel Jones is not capable of doing that. Daniel Jones is the type of quarterback that you have to have a top-level roster around him, a la like the 49ers. You got to have a top O-line, you got to have a star receiver, a big tight end, and a strong running game. And if everything's perfect around him, he could take a team to a Super Bowl. But he cannot take average players and raise their level to a top platform. He cannot. And the injuries are starting to mount. 2 major neck injuries now in his career. So I asked you the question, when the Giants have a horrible year this year and they're headed for like a 5-win season, maybe. And if the Giants are picking in the top 10, and the Giants are going to start trading away players, 4 teams have contacted the Giants for Barkley. 2 of them have offered a 2nd-round pick. You got Adoree, he's going to get traded. Leo's on the market. Even Waller is a tight end that teams want, and when they come calling, you got to do it. You're going to have to mount the picks for this next draft, as we are still in a full-blown rebuild. And this is a major quarterback draft, the biggest one in over a decade. And you cannot afford to let a quarterback slip by in the top 10, maybe top 5. Khalid, May, several others. Kid from Washington. The Giants got to get a young quarterback, 20, 21 years old, and start fresh. This regime, Joe Shane and Dabble, deserves at least 4 to 5 more years. They bought themselves that with a shocking, surprising year last year with a terrible team. You let the young regime, and I want the young regime here, because Belichick, greatest head coach ever, arguably. I love him, and I wanted him back home 3 years ago. This is the wrong time. He's 71 years old, and he's proving that he's not a good GM. You keep Shane and Dabble. You don't fire them and start over again. They're in the middle of a rebuild. They're finally putting the pieces together. They're going to have a lot more picks, and they're going to have about $130 million next year. First time that they'll have spending money to go get a number 1 receiver, some other players, a linebacker, an O-lineman. They gave it a try to be decent this year, to be competitive. It didn't work. It's still early. They can turn it around with a win against Washington and maybe another win versus the Jets. That's what would have to happen to start to think. But even then, you're still far off. It's still early. But Daniel Jones is injured, so he's missing some more games. Again, you got to factor that in. Next year, he's going into his 6th year. How old is he? 26? You got quarterbacks that are like 20 years old coming out in this draft. The regime deserves to get their own guy. We got to start young again. Barkley's almost surely getting traded, and rightfully so. You get a pick or 2 for him. It's not fair to keep him. You already showed you're not going to pay him, so let's not go through that whole hula hoop next offseason again, because he's going to sit out next year. Okay? Trade him to Buffalo or Baltimore, Cleveland. These are the teams interested. I heard Dallas offered a 2. You don't trade him to Dallas. I think you send him to Buffalo. He gets to keep his family where they are in PA. In the metro area, it's not far from Buffalo. He's still in the Northeast, and he gets to play for a Super Bowl contender. And let me tell you something, man. Barkley's loved by this Giants nation. And he's loved across the league because he's a great player, but he's a mensch of a human. Put him in Buffalo, give him a chance to go far. Chance to win a championship, play championship football in January. He deserves that. And you keep him in the state of New York. I think he fits perfect with Buffalo, and we all know Shane and Dabo are connected to Buffalo, so I think that's where the trade's going to be. If you get a second rounder, wow, cherry on a cake. If you get a third and like a sixth, you squeeze it and you do it. Now's the time to make these trades and grab a lot of picks. Adoree can go to Buffalo too. There are teams out there that need a corner. You take what you could get. Someone offers you a 4, you take it. Leo. If you could get Leo somewhere, and there are teams that would love a defensive tackle, and believe me, Leo's still among the top defensive tackles in football. And Waller, there are teams that want Waller. I'm hearing the Cincinnati Bengals. Hey, you gave it a try. Waller was never truly a Giant anyway. Sorry, it didn't work. We're going to go to the draft and bring in some young pieces. We'll get ourselves a nice young tight end to go with Bellinger. Get what you could get for Waller. Do it now. You got eyes on May. I'm hearing Joe Shane loves May. You got Khalib. You got the QB from Michigan, Washington. There's going to be about 6 quarterbacks in this draft, and the Giants are going to have to go get one. This draft dictates that the New York Giants take a young stud quarterback who raises the organization and brings some juice and fire back to the New York Football Giants. You could keep Daniel Jones for 1 more year and let the kid sit behind him and learn. He's getting paid some pretty damn healthy money to do so. And then you can let Jones go and let him go where he wants to go and be happy. We gave it a try. Guys, it didn't work. Daniel Jones is not going to be a New York Giant when the time comes for the Giants to contend for a Super Bowl. You go young kid, 20. You get a young running back in the 3rd round or wherever to go with Gray. You'll have 2 young running backs. They won't be Barkleys. But we've shown in the past that you don't need a Barkley to win Super Bowls. You got to build this right, and you got to let this regime finish what they started, and they are just starting. Last year was an awesome, fun year, but it wasn't reality. This year is more what the Giants are. We are a rebuilding team, and there's a lot of growing to do and learning. There are kids on this team that are going to be good, but you got to have patience. It doesn't happen in 12 months. It takes 2-3 years. So sit back and let the regime do what they do. The radios want to talk about Belichick because it stirs the pot and it gets the phones ringing. It's all about ratings. This young regime is going nowhere. We're not flipping the script again for the 3rd time in 4 years. You got the right regime. They know what they're doing. Joe Shane's a scout and Dabo's a hell of a coach. Let them build their team. And they should go pick their quarterback because it all starts with your own quarterback. And Daniel Jones, I love the guy. He's a good guy. He's a class act. He's the face of a franchise. And he really works his ass off. But he isn't their guy. They didn't draft him. And they still did right by him. They gave him $80 million for 2 years. You know why? Because they knew he wasn't going to be the guy. But they treated him with the class that he's carried himself for this organization, so they rewarded him. They gave it a try. Maybe because Mara wanted it. It doesn't hurt because it's only 2 years and it's not a 4-year guarantee. You bring a kid in this draft behind Jones and he'll learn. What I'm saying is, although Belichick is the mighty Bill Belichick and he came from this Giants organization, the timing was 2-3 years ago and not now. Now you got the guys in place. You can't get rid of a young, intact regime that's building. For a 71-year-old man, although he's the great Belichick, you're not guaranteed any number of years because of his age. And he's a man that doesn't want a GM, but he's also proven lately that he's not a good drafter or talent evaluator. You don't need that problem. I love the guys we have. We're sticking with the guys we have. I can guarantee you that. The Giants can win this game Sunday. And we can have whispers about a big game versus the Jets. That if you go in and win that, maybe you're starting to make the season respectable. Try to get back towards 500. But if the Giants lose Sunday, I think you're going to start to see the beginning of a fire sale, and rightfully so. And for the long run, I hate to say this because I never, ever, ever was a fan that rooted to lose. For the long run, it might be better for the Giants to end up with a top 5 pick in the draft. And it might be better for the Giants to start trading away a couple of these names for a basket of picks. It is what it is. Midday Miz.